You have choices within those circumstances. And that's the thing that sucks, is that our circumstances absolutely might be shaped by everything else around us. There might be rumors that go around about you, and maybe you didn't do it. Maybe it's just someone who's just running their mouth, they're jealous of you, or maybe they really think you did do something terrible. You can't control that. You can control how you respond to that. It does in fact impact you, because now people are going to treat you differently based on what they've heard about you. I don't know, stop me if you've heard this before, but life is suffering. You don't get to choose not to suffer. What you can choose is what you're going to suffer for. You can choose how you're going to suffer. Are you going to suffer with bitterness and resentment? Is the world fair? No. In fact, it's almost unfair to expect the world to be fair. But you could bother yourself with that a lot, or you could get about the business of living your life. That's the danger of being hung up on unfairness. Is it true that everybody has been treated unfairly? Yes. Is it fair that some people are oppressed? Yes. Is it fair that some people have privilege? Yes. These are true in all different directions. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to be bitter about it? You're going to be resentful about it? And by that, that's a real choice. And by the way, it's totally understandable if you are. But the point is that it won't help you. It won't get you out of the thing that's bothering you. It won't get you out of the circumstances and the situation. What kind of freedom do you think he might be talking about here? The fear of freedom is the fear of assuming responsibility.
I just thought it was like general freedom. I didn't associate it with anything.
So what's freedom? And this, by the way, is really problematic right now. For any of you guys who go into any of the sciences, especially the neurosciences, it's looking more and more, there are more and more researchers who don't think we have this. They don't think you have this. And when you think you're making a choice, like, oh, I'm choosing to write in a blue marker, or I'm choosing to write in a purple marker, there's a growing body of neuroscientists who say you don't really have a choice. You think you do. You think you're making a choice, but you're being caused to make a choice. And so if it's true that there's no such thing as a spirit, as a soul, anything non-material, in other words, if the whole universe is nothing but material matter, chemicals, atoms, and all that, then we recognize cause and effect everywhere else. I let go of this marker, it's going to fall. Why? Physics, man. Physics. Well, doesn't the marker have a soul and a spirit? No, of course not. So that means it can only do what it's being acted upon to do by the physical world. If it's true that you don't have a soul or a spirit and you're only a physical body, well then that seems to, and even your mind, you might think, well, that's a function of the brain, which is a physical organ, and that means you don't have free will. You can think that you do, but you don't. You're actually just a bundle of chemicals being acted upon by physics, by the physical world around you. So if you're thinking like, oh, should I go to college or not? I need to make a choice. Nah, you think you're making a choice, but you're not. What you're actually doing is you're responding to the external stimuli around you, by your genetics, by your upbringing, by your environment. And that's a really uncomfortable thing for us, because then that means that you don't really have a choice in anything in the world any more than the marker does. The forces that act on the marker are simpler than the forces that act upon you, but it's still acting upon you. Now, someone might say, well, who cares? It doesn't matter. Oh, it starts to if you internalize it. It doesn't matter, of course, if you don't think about it. If you just don't think about it, then you assume that you have free will. But now that will start to impact you in how you treat people, how you treat yourself. And you'll start to realize at that point that, the thing that gives life meaning is exactly that, choice. I have a choice to be a good person. I have a choice to be a bad person. I have a choice to be that concentration camp guard, or I have a choice to be the person who joins the prisoners in the concentration camp because I refuse to be a guard. Even if once you're at that guard level, you have a choice to be those doctors I mentioned earlier who had to get drunk to make the selections, or you have a choice to be Joseph Mengele, who enjoys the selections. Then that means that you're responsible for the things that you do. But then that means that you're responsible for everything that you do. You're not responsible for your circumstances, but you're responsible for how you behave within your circumstances. And so you might say, well, I didn't choose to be a concentration camp guard. That's true, but you can choose whether or not you go along with it. But I don't really have a choice though, because if I don't do it, they're gonna kill my whole family, and I have a responsibility to my family. Okay, but you have a choice. If you're gonna let more live or fewer live, more die or cause fewer to die, you have choices within those circumstances. And that's the thing that sucks, is that our circumstances absolutely might be shaped by everything else around us. You know, there might be rumors that go around about you, and maybe you didn't do it. Maybe it's just someone who's just running their mouth, you know, they're jealous of you, or maybe they really think you did do something terrible. But in any event, you didn't do the thing that the rumors are circulating about you about. You can't control that. You can control how you respond to that. And it does in fact impact you. Because now people are going to treat you differently based on what they've heard about you. Several of you, before you came in here, I'm sure you had cousins, nieces, nephews, brothers, friends, whatever, who had me in the past. And so when you came in, you probably heard some things about me, and that has shaped how it is that you perceive me. Is it warranted? Maybe, maybe not. But some of you in here I've met before because you would come in with your friends. Last year, year before last. And you might think I don't remember you, but of course, faces don't vary that much over the years. Now I could judge you by who you were 2 years ago or a year ago. Obviously those impressions linger a little bit, but you can't control it. What you can control is how you responded within those circumstances, within those situations. And that's what freedom really is. I don't know, stop me if you've heard this before, but life is suffering. You don't get to choose not to suffer. What you can choose is what you're going to suffer for. You can choose how you're going to suffer. Are you going to suffer with bitterness and resentment? Is the world fair? No. No. In fact, it's almost unfair to expect the world to be fair. And by the way, we probably couldn't even define what fairness is anyway. And even if we found fairness, we may not even realize it's fairness until we have to have a bird's eye view of a whole situation to know what's fair and what's not fair. But you could bother yourself with that a lot, or you could get about the business of living your life. That's the danger of being hung up on unfairness. Is it true that everybody has been treated unfairly? Yes. Is it fair that some people are oppressed? Yes. Is it fair that some people have privilege? Yes. These are true in all different directions. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to be bitter about it? You're going to be resentful about it? And by that, that's a real choice. And by the way, it's totally understandable if you are. But the point is that it won't help you. It won't get you out of the thing that's bothering you. It won't get you out of the circumstances and the situation. Concentration camp prisoners could have been bitter and angry and resentful, and it wouldn't have freed them. They could have found a way to live with meaning and purpose within those confines. The guards who were forced to do what they were doing, it didn't, their bitterness and their resentment towards the regime didn't free them from those responsibilities. But they could find ways within those circumstances and within those responsibilities to be the best person possible. That's what freedom is. Freedom is not being able to do whatever you want to do. And by the way, what would your life look like if you could do anything that you wanted to do and get away with it? I wonder how many of us would be better people, and how many of us would be far, far worse people. I don't know. I'll leave that to you to think about for yourself. And you, by the way, you might think it's fun as well, but part of what makes life so enjoyable, so livable, maybe even, are those challenges, those limitations. And I've talked before that if I busted out a Monopoly board and said, all right, let's play some Monopoly, and you're setting everything up, and as you're doling out the money, I start putting hotels on all the spots, and you're like, what are you doing? I'm putting out hotels. Why? Because that's how you win. You want to get all the money. We haven't even started yet. Oh, I know, but I figured this would be easier for me if I just did this. That's against the rules. Rules. So then you're like, oh, well, if it's all about getting as much money as possible, so you just grab all the money from the bank. And you bring it over and go, well, then I won. And I'm like, no, you haven't. I grab a bunch of the money. How long is this game going to go on? It's the limitations that make the game valuable, that make the game playable, that make the game enjoyable. It's the limitations of life a lot of times that make life enjoyable. It's the challenges of it. If you could do whatever you wanted to do, how would you live? If life was perfect, we have to invent problems, which we do a lot, by the way. We invent problems because we recognize it's the limitations. We recognize that if things are too good, they just don't feel right because we don't have to overcome anything. And it's in the overcoming that we become better. We become those, to use the cliche, the better or best versions of ourselves. If you never have to overcome anything, 100% literally, you would still be kicking and screaming and crying and having your diapers changed. It's everything that you've had to overcome, all the challenges you've had to face, that have made you the person who you are today, for better or for worse. Whether you're better or whether you're worse, it's a matter of freedom. How did you choose to respond to those challenges and circumstances? Now that's where you are today. Who are you going to be tomorrow, next month, 10 years from now? That too has everything to do with how you respond to those challenges and those circumstances. The problem is that once you accept that, now you're responsible for how things turn out. And by the way, even if you don't accept it, you're still responsible for how things turn out. So you might as well embrace it. And if you embrace it, man, I promise you, you're capable of far more than you can possibly conceptualize at this point. And it'll be a tragedy for you to get 10 years from now, 20 years from now, look back and think about what you could have been capable of if you only realized it. I hope you take the time to think about it and realize what you're capable of. No, your circumstances aren't perfect. No, you can't do anything you want to do. But what you can do is choose to be better within those circumstances. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.